everyone and welcome to Neve's channel. Today I'm going to be doing a flip through of my first completed journal for 2018. It's a Dina Wakely mixed media journal, the small one, with the 4 different substrates in it, with the cotton rag paper, the burlap, the canvas and the craft card. I started this journal in around about the 25th, 26th of January. And I finished it last night, so the 21st of April. So basically this year I've been challenging myself to make time for art every day, even if it's just doing a background or something small, just to clear my mind and give me a bit of chance to catch up on being creative. So starting with the front cover, I wasn't going to do anything with the cover because I actually love the feel of the journal itself. It's just such a nice size. But I found this picture in a Flow magazine and I just loved it. I thought it was beautiful, so I scanned a copy of it and printed it out, stuck it onto the front of my journal, and then covered it with clear contact just to protect it. And as you can see, it's got paint on it and dirty bits, but it looks well loved, so I'm quite happy with that. So the first page, I didn't actually work chronologically in this, certainly not at the beginning, so this is sort of done halfway through the journey, which was after watching a James Burke video about the rule of threes, using 3 colours, 3 patterns, 3 textures, and I decided to have it as a bit of an introduction page to my journal. So I've got some of his digi stamps with hair cut out using some gel press images I have, some washi on here, doing a bit of Z tangling, and this is an image that I used to create our wedding invitations, which happened in December. So it was a sample piece that I cut out for our cake topper, and I had a spare one. The size didn't work, so I glued that in there because I love the way it's looking inwards towards the journal. This is one of the first pieces I did, and I absolutely loved it. It was very different from the way I usually work, and it was all about exploring how to use acrylic paint and to get that watercolor effect. In the background you can see there's some textures through here. That's using Opal's embossing enamels, which is a product I used to manufacture, just to give that resist effect and that speckle of white colour through there. It originally didn't have these big pink spots through here, and you'll see why on the next page. This was an ungessoed page, so that's the reason why the ink kind of came through. But as the page says, it says go with flow, just go with the flow, so I did. This page is using the Jane Davenport collage papers, and it was my first experiment with doing a watercolour galaxy using the mermaid markers and some watercolours. I loved doing it. I was really impressed with it. I thought I'd done an amazing job, and then I turned back to the other page and it's like, oh no, I ruined that page. But I've since come to really like that little spot of pink coming through. It's growing on me. This is my first chance working with the burlap. I was really unsure of what to do with it. I had ideas when I first got the journal about sewing into it and weaving it and pulling bits out and cutting into it, but I never really eventuated with that while I was doing it. However, I'd done these collage pieces before, this Mixed Media Queens piece, which I really liked, and the piece in the background is from an old poetry book that I found from the 1890s, all handwritten poetry in pencil and ink pen. It's just lovely to see a glimpse into the past and just the penmanship and the thoughts of someone from that age. And I like the fact that I'm bringing their work to life again and letting someone else see it. In the background I used a Kaiser Craft stencil, and I really like the way that stenciling came up with the burlap and how you get that really clear definition. So that's a technique that I used quite a bit, and on the next page I actually did it again just to get the idea, and I've kept going back to this page going, oh, it's not finished, it's not finished, and I kind of like the simplicity of it, of just the stencil and the be your own kind of beautiful. This is actually one of the first pages I did in the journal. Again, just exploring some of my new Dina Wakely paints and having a go at being pretty abstract, doing some mark making, using the edges of my palette knives to make the markings on it. Again, trying to get that sort of watercolory effect, which I've had mixed success with while I've been doing it. But that's what art journals are for, is to keep having a go and keep experimenting. I think at this stage I'd also just watched The Greatest Showman. So this is all about being never enough, and some of the lyrics from that song in the writing down the bottom. This piece was one of the second piece I did in the journal, using the canvas. Now, I loved using the canvas throughout this journal. It was just such an easy product to use. Most of the times I gessoed the page, which was why it shrunk, but I actually quite like the fact that you see things peeking out from behind it. This is using the scribble sticks, Dina Wakely scribble sticks, and some of her stamps, and again some embossing in the background just to see how that worked, to get that resist effect. This was using some of the Jane Davenport tissue papers. So this is one of her faces, and then I continued on the figure from there and tried my own bit of handwriting over here, which is a bit nerve-wracking because I don't like my handwriting very much, so I was quite pleased with how that turned out. This is one of my first gel prints, using the circular gel prints that I had and using the Jane Davenport stencil over the top. I quite like the gilt effect in the background, so I continued that on to the back with the night, and calling it the Queen of the Night, because why should it be just the man and the moon? Now this is actually repainted over. I did try doing some abstract flowers in the background and I hated it, so I actually repainted it and did it, and I was really pleased with how it turned out. This page called Freedom, with this stencil, it's a stencil that I've created myself from an old picture from a National Geographic of three, father, a mother and a small boy who've arrived at Ellis Island in New York looking at Statue of Liberty. It's quite a famous photo, and I just love that backwards silhouette looking towards something. Again, this was just experimenting with new stamps. I got a package of new stamps, this cracked wall. I just wanted to have a bit of a play, really. This is completely not me, but I love this page, and it was something I needed to tell myself, just to breathe, to relax, just to go with the flow. I use art journaling as a way of relaxation, a way of working through what's going through my mind. I overthink, I struggle to get my words out, so art is my way to do that. So this is a page, again using the embossing enamels in the background to get this resist effect. I've also used some texture paste. You can sort of see that vaguely with this marble pattern in the background, and just adding the colours and the circles over the top just to build up that layer. I'm not great at using the colour green. It's not my go-to colour, but I actually really like how it worked in this page, and I loved the font, which was breaking out my old Making Memory foam stamps. They're a beautiful size, and they just worked brilliantly over this page. This is my least favourite and probably one of my favourite pages in the journal. I really hate this page. It was a page I tried to do using inks, trying to get that drippy effect in the background, and it just didn't work for me. The stencil I quite like, which is a Stencil Girl stencil, but just overall I'm not an orange person, and I didn't like the way the inks reacted on the cotton paper. This is a canvas page that again I came back to numerous times. I'd used the embossing enamels in the background, which is why it's got a sort of plasticky look, and I'd actually ironed them on so they go into the fabric of the canvas and give a really cool effect, and then put some paints and dyes over the top, and it sat like that for quite a while. And then I got some digi stamps from James Burke Creative, and I got this one called Stella, printed out a ridiculous size, and it's my first time using mermaid markers, I think, to colour it in, and I absolutely loved it. And I put it on this page. It's like, yep, instant galaxy. Put the border around it, and I have to say it's probably one of my favourite pages. I just love the big eyes staring out at you and the colours in the page. Throughout this journal, I've challenged myself to do some drawing of faces. It's something I've always shied away from. My wheelhouse is stamping and collage. This is something I'm really comfortable with doing, a page like this. This, not so much. So this was using the Jane Davenport tissue, collage tissue, and then painting over the top using the Distress crayons. I love the bronze one. It gives a really nice glitter to it. I'm not completely happy with it, but I'm glad that I've had the go with doing it. And working on the hair. Hair is something I've really struggled with, so trying to get that flowy effect. So as the journal goes on, I get more and more confident with my drawing abilities, not necessarily because they improve, but I've just become more confident with what I'm doing, and again, more confident with it doesn't matter if it doesn't look perfect. So this page, I've had this image for a long time sitting in my collage folder, not using it because I just loved it so much. And for those of you who don't know, I'm a primary school teacher. I'm on maternity leave at the moment. But one of my favourite lessons I've done with my kids in the recent while was we had a primary school art gallery last year, and the theme was balance. So because we have limited time in our curriculum, I decided that try and kill 5,000 stones with one bird, and we decided to draw mandalas, looking at drawing with lines, looking at symmetry, so we could tie it into our maths, looking at the mindfulness and relaxation as well, which is something really important we need to be looking at teaching kids this day. And it was amazing. The class was just absolutely quiet. The kids were all working on their dinner plate size mandalas, and they all looked fantastic. So much so that I got completely hooked on drawing them. And I thought that this page, it just really tied in well with the image. This was me trying to do another galaxy using the mermaid markers, dropping in some ink. The quote says, "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to recognise itself." And again, this is another image from National Geographic, which has been hanging around for ages, and I just thought it fitted perfectly. Completely weird and kooky, but I quite like it. This is what I originally imagined doing with the burlap pages, with sewing into it. Now, I'm not a sewer at all, or embroiderer. I will have a go at it. I had big plans of stitching out the entire quote, but I got bored and just, it was enough. Then I thought, oh, I'll stitch in some stars. Didn't quite get there, and cheated because 2 days ago I ended up with a constellation stencil, and I thought, oh, I'll use that in my gold texture paste, which bled out a little bit, but I quite like the effect. So I've kind of got two different ways of getting a galaxy effect on the pages. This is actually one of the last pages I've done in the journal. It's been sitting there sort of blank for 3 months now. And after watching an Inky Fairy design video, she used tissue paper on her burlap pages just to make them a little bit easier so that the paint didn't go through, that you could do a little bit more with it. And it just changed the way I used all the burlap pages. I love the fact that you can still see the texture within the page, but it doesn't leak through the page before. You don't get that imprint coming through the page before, but you still get the effect of having the burlap. So I really enjoyed it. And as the journal goes on, you'll see that I have started to develop my own style, I suppose you say, with lots of bright colours, lots of layering of stencils, and putting the handwriting or text on the page in some way, shape or form. This is doing a foil resist print using a jelly plate, which was a technique that I had lots of fun playing with, and the video's on my YouTube, so check that out. It's become a really popular video, and it was just using a magazine image to transfer the ink and then foiling it over the top. So I really like the fact that you've got the singer happening there, and it's all about always singing your own song. I was having one of those days with this page where I was feeling very introverted, and this quote just really spoke to me. This image is another Jane Davenport collage paper, and again drawing in the figure up from behind that. I really love the Dina Wakley circle stamps, and they're a quick and easy way to create a tree in the background. So I did that. This is the collage papers as well. Now, when this page was originally done, these colours were done in oxide inks, and they're really, really bright and vibrant. I don't know if it's just me, but what I've found with the oxide inks, as the longer they leave, the more chalky white they become, no matter what colour they are, which is a little bit frustrating, because when they first go on the page, they really, really pop. You think this is amazing. Then you go back a few hours later, a few days later, and it's sort of dulled right down. So I don't know how I'm going to fix that, or if I'm just going to leave it. But it is a bit of frustration. I did this page after we'd just taken our youngest daughter back to hospital again. When she was 2 weeks old, we took her to hospital, and she ended up staying in hospital with me for a week because she ended up with viral meningitis. So a few weeks later, everyone got gastro and wasn't feeling great, and we ended up back in emergency again just to check her out. And while I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a panicker, I tend to be fairly level-headed when it comes to these sorts of things. Just because she'd been so sick in the first 2 weeks, I was really concerned that something like that would happen again. So I wanted to be better safe than sorry. And when I came home from both experiences, was when it sort of really hit me. It was fine during it, everything happened, it was all good, and it wasn't until sort of we were told, yep, everything's fine, you can go home now, that I actually cried for the first time. So that's why that quote really spoke to me. And the picture as well I'm really proud of that portrait. It's one of my first portraits I've ever done that actually kind of looks like someone. So I was happy with the shading and how it worked out, and while my eyes aren't still quite right, it was much closer than I'd ever been before. Again, you can see in the background where I've stamped with the oxide inks, and the green in particular has just really paled down. This pink used to be very, very vibrant on the page, and it's just sort of dulled down. But I still like how balanced it all ended up being. Again, you can see the difference in the drawings of the faces. So these faces were done using the Jane Davenport stamps, and I got a bit kooky with them. It was after watching another James Burke Creator video where he's doing some sort of swatch dolls with odd shapes in their bodies and using stencils to do that sort of reverse pattern on it. And they sort of sat there and I wasn't happy with them. And then I looked in my collage drawer. Oh, that's flipped up. There you go. And I had some Heidi Swap crown rub-ons. They've been in there since 2008 when I went to a class up in Brisbane with her. And I thought, okay, I can make those into necklaces. And then I thought, oh, false eyelashes. So I quite like how sort of it was using everything I had in some strange different way. And again, the Delusions snarky quote, what the frick happened? So quite enjoyed that one. This is my Attack from Mars Alien Girl, using a very layered background, darkroom doors, stencil in the background. But I liked how it progressed using the shading and so on. This is sort of getting closer to what I was looking for. Even though I know the hairline's completely wrong, it was still a lot of practicing and having fun doing that. This is a page using, on the craft page, using a completely different colour scheme than I've ever used before. And I really liked it until I put the night on. I've been watching a lot of Lisa Oxley videos and Fiona Partridge, where they have that dark line along the middle and they make it work beautifully every time. And I tried to replicate it and I just have a black line or a deep blue line. But as I wrote there, every little thing is an experiment. If it doesn't work, it's a chance to come up with a better solution. Sort of always looking for the positive side of things. I really love the yellow on it. I'm not a yellow person usually, but I really love the contrast of the yellow and the blue. Again, this was with the oxides, and it was a vibrant green. I think it was cracked pistachio, and it's dulled right back. So if anyone's got any solutions with that one, I'd love to hear what they are. I don't know if anyone else has had the issue with working with the craft card, but I found when I was working on it, it used to curl considerably compared to all the other pages. Now because this is so full now, it's flattened out, which is great, but in the beginning it was really curly and hard to work on. This is after watching someone on Instagram called Mike David. He does a lot of very graphic artwork, geometric artwork using Posca paint pens. I didn't have any at this stage, so I used my Dina Wakley acrylics, some of the glitter markers from Jane Davenport, but I really like how it all sort of turned out. This is just a use it up background page. I was trying out the Jane Davenport face stamp using some of the washi. I actually quite like how it all went together, how it isn't perfect, how you've got the different colours in the background. It's using the mermaid markers in the glitzy colours, or celestial sky, sorry, in the background. In this journal I was trying to use colour schemes that I haven't used very much of. Purple probably isn't one of my go-to colours either. I actually do quite like colours, but obviously just not on their own in the monochrome. So I decided to try and use as many purple things I had as possible. And again, trying to use that sort of cross shape going across the middle. I've got some embossing enamels in the backgrounds, which have given the resist. Using mermaid markers on the Delusions cutout. This is a deep sea colour, which I absolutely adore. And unfortunately mine's is leaking, so I've tried to save as much as possible of it, and I've kind of stopped using it because I don't want to lose it. And I was really impressed because I matched up all the eyes and nose of the Jane Davenport washi, and I thought, oh, that's something new, and then I realised that everyone knew how to do that. But I really like that you can do that and you can create your own faces. This page is sort of harking back to what I used to do when I started doing journaling and collage in the early 2000s, using lots of the browns and the Tim Holtz type colour palette. This is using gel press, the circle gel press that I had for the first time, and I really loved using it straight onto the page. This is actually a paper, my paper, which I had published or printed by Stamp It a long time ago, so I've still got some of it. I'm loath to use it because it's quite special having your own paper, but I thought, well, if it's going to be in my art journal, it's something I can keep, so I'm really pleased that I was able to find somewhere to use that. I really like the effect of having the double page and having the acetate go over the top, so you can still see what's happening, but it kind of ties the two pages together, especially with the wheels and the cogs in the background of the gel print. And obviously I still had my crown rub-ons out, so she needed a crown to go with it, and some of my Dresden strip, and she got a bit of an earring happening with the wings. So this is the Tim Holtz paper dolls cutouts sitting on one of the rulers. This is another collage I've done on the Heidi Swartz playing cards. So you can also see the playing card bits in the background, using the scribbly bird stamps, which are one of my favourites, I think. I really, as I said before, like the stamping and stenciling onto the burlap. It takes it really well, and I just loved how it gave an extra texture to the page. And then just using some pattern paper to make a bit of a ruffle around the collage itself, just to lift it off the page. This was just a page using leftover paints from gel press prints. Had some of the gold paint out, so I put the stencil over the back. Thought it looked a bit like wallpaper, and I found this gorgeous print of the Queen when she was a teenager in, I think it was in a Frankie magazine, so I cut that out and added to the page. And then I found this quote in a Flow magazine and thought it worked really well together. So pretty simple page, but it sort of evolved over a few sessions of going back and going, oh, that would work there, and what else would work there. This is using the Jane Davenport stamp, face stamp again. Again, you can see this is sort of a leftover page with a braille page in the back, or braille rolling in the background. But I really like the way I was sort of working on my shading of the faces in this, and I love the quote. She is a mermaid, but approach her with caution. Her mind swims at depths most would drown in. So that kind of spoke to me. This was a collage piece I did. It's very, very textured, and it's got bits of copper tape in it, tinfoil, pattern paper, there's some music in here. Just collaged it all onto the page, then dribbled Black Dilutions ink down the page, let that dry, and then use the distress crayons to go back in and add some colour. So it almost gives you that strata effect. In my house I've got a huge big painting that I've done using a very similar technique to this, which is one of my favourite paintings, and I wanted to sort of replicate that on a smaller scale, see if it worked in my journal. So I was really happy. So it's just more of an experimenting page to see how much collage the canvas would take. On the back, me being a little bit more adventurous in my drawing, and not actually using a stamp or a stencil or a collage tissue to start with. So this is after watching a Jane Davenport drawing video, using the, I think it was, used the Feud ball in this because it's actually gone in with the watercolours, and using the mermaid markers over the top to give that watercolour effect. It was a gessoed page, which is why sort of some of the colours sunk into the page. And then just doing the hand-drawn border on it just to finish it off. This page had a few different iterations. In the background, I don't know if you can see, but I wanted to do a watercolour page, and the watercolour onto the rag paper just wasn't working for me. It was seeping into the page and not moving the way I wanted it to. So I sort of ended up with lots of blobby bits. So what I did was I used the Epic pen, which is a carbon-based pen which is waterproof, to draw around the different sort of colour shadings of the watercolours. And it sat there for ages. I think it was in purples and yellows, and it just didn't work for me. And then I did watched James Burke drawing video on how to draw a mermaid using brush strokes, which I really enjoyed doing. If you've got a chance to check that out, it's a great video to do. So I had this mermaid floating around, and I put it on that page. Thought, oh, that works. And I had some of Tim Holtz's sea creatures, which again I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to get lots of use out of that stamp set, and I'd never actually used. So I broke that out, stamped them in the background, put a bit of extra colour in the background. I actually quite like how it ended up, sort of with those different colours and the lines through it, and put the quote down the end, what does a mermaid dream of? This was one of my entries for the Dina Wakeley Media Tribe challenge, which I can't remember what it was for. Rest, or I think it might have been the rest one. So it's no, but or maybe it was seize a moment or something like that. But basically, what would you do today? So using a quote from my favourite musical, Rent, no day but today, I drew in the tree, and using a water droplet stamped in the leaves of the tree, and again I used the oxide inks to colour them in. I had beautiful colours over this page, and then I came back a few days later and they'd all dulled down. So this is actually me. I've gone back in with Posca paint pens and coloured them in again, and it's still not as bright as it was the very first day I did it, but it's much better than it was. And I really liked just the restful nature of this. If I have to do monochromes, I tend to go with blues. I really love working with blues. They're a very restful colour for me, and I just find I can work with them a lot easier than some of the other colours. These are two of my favourite pages, I think. Again, watching a James Burke creative video on how to draw his swatch dolls. It's a gorgeous video, so quick and easy, and you actually feel like, oh wow, I can draw and I can do cute illustrations. So I did this one originally, and when I did it, it just reminded me so much of my oldest daughter. She's just turned 2 with a little blankie. Well, when I did her, I thought she needed a blankie, so I used a bit of pattern paper to do it, and I wrote a bit of a story in the background. This is the day she decided she didn't need to sleep. Fortunately, she's decided that a lot recently, but this was one of the first days where she decided she didn't need to sleep during the afternoon. So it was just fun and really sort of stood out to me. So it's E for the Explorer, and because I'd done that, I needed to do one for Erin. So Erin the Brave with her balloons, and got a little bit more in depth with the Z-tangling on it, using the cotton thread for the balloons, which I quite like, and drawing the crown for her. So if we ever write a picture book for the girls, we've got the illustrations ready to go for them. And again, I wrote a bit of a story about why Erin is the brave in the background. This page, I can't decide if it's finished or not. I quite like it the way it is. It was one of my practice drawings for the Jane Davenport Supply Me pages, using, I think it was using a Neo 2 aqua crayon, but I was really pleased with how it went, and I was really pleased with the hair. I felt it was a lot more flowy and natural. So work in progress, but you can see there's been a bit of a development in how it's gone. This page again stayed looking a bit funky for ages. I had the background with lots of different bright colours on it, and Carabelle Studio big stamp over the background, and it just wasn't going anywhere. I couldn't work out what to do with it. Then I added the raised stencil with the black dilutions, and thought I'd add the border and so on. So it's what it is, I think. So the quote says, "If you know me based on who I was 5 years ago, you don't know me at all. All my growth came... My growth game is strong. This is me." Again, sort of hiking back to that what do you call it? The Greatest Showman song. So this is one hive mind using texture paste in the background with the hives, which I really love the colour combination with that. And I tried using the texture paste on the burlap, which works really, really well, but does make the page really, really heavy. This is the Prima coloured texture pastes, and doing the same on the background. Again, just chucking in my scribbly birds. So playing with mermaids. I'm not really a mermaid person, but it was a great way to practice doing the hair. This is on a gessoed page. I started gessoing the cotton rag paper. It works well for the acrylics to have it gessoed, not so well for the mermaid markers, tend to seep in a little bit, but I quite like how it worked on this page, and using the paint over pens in the hair. This is another page for the Dina Wakeley Media Tribe page, talking about what you would like to embrace, I think, or what you'd change. So this is me playing again with a lot of new products that I had, the new colours of the paints, some new stencils, and then writing my heart out over the top, which I needed to do that day. So that was good. This is my first page using the black gesso, which I love. It's very matte and just takes colour beautifully. And then going over the top with the Jane Davenport paints and crayons, stamping in the hair, which I really liked, and using the Heidi Swap Colour Shine gold in the background, which is beautiful. I love it, but it does stay sticky, so just be aware. This page was again inspired by Mike Davis from Instagram. He was doing some stuff with letters, and I decided I wanted to try it out using my name. And at this stage I had got some Posca paint pens, which work a lot better. So this is my sample page of using my Posca paint pens. This page I did for my 40th, of all the things that I've achieved and I want to achieve. I did this because just before I turned 30, I started a scrapbook page of 30 things I want to do before being 30, and I didn't get that ever finished, so I thought, well, let's focus on what I have done and what I can still do. So playing around, and I really enjoyed this. This is a second piece of the wedding topper that went with this one, so I just painted over it to stick it in, so we're both in there. This was going through my paint palette and finding all my bright colours, and I'm so glad I did, because I just love them all together. And why use one colour when you can use them all? So talking about all the changes that have happened in the last few years, both the good and the bad, and why I love them. And I really like that page. These using the Making Memory foam stamps again. This is another page for the Jane Davenport drawing class using gesso and painting and collaging over gessoed pieces just to sort of pull it together. So again, something that I was fairly used to doing. It's something I used to do in the past. This is a magazine picture from the Flow magazine and then just recolored over the top of it. So I gessoed over it and then recolored it. Now if you gesso and then use watercolors or the mermaid markers over it, it does dull it down somewhat, which is what's happened here, but I quite like the sort of dreamy effect it gives. And again, this is another go doing the same thing. For this one, I've used the Jane Davenport collage papers of the faces, sort of cut those out and then drawn in the rest of the figures of the rest of the faces. So this one's got a little strip here and I've drawn in the rest of the face. Same with down here. Added some washi and some stenciling in the background. Some more drawing practice of faces, this time using the Epic pen, which is a really fine nibbed pen, just to get that fine detail. You can see the difference in the eyes, going from that almond shape to changing it up a bit. Again, that was just the lady on there. Went back another stage and filled in the background. This piece was inspired by a piece I saw on YouTube. I can't remember the lady's name, I'm really sorry, but it was using Neo colours too, and there was a burlap page in here and I thought, oh, I can't use it, I can't face using it, so I actually cut it up and stuck it down this page, so I cheated somewhat, but I quite like the texture and the continuated colour on it. These are two of my favourite pages in here. They're both inspired by another lady on YouTube, Diana Colours, I think. That's her YouTube handle. I loved how this one turned out. A really simple way to draw flowers, but it's just so effective. And then on this one, using the Dilution's new star stamps in the background on the canvas. And again, using the Tim Holtz word stickers. I just love those, and the Dina Wakley stamps over there. They just sort of sum everything up. Two more pages using a colour that I don't tend to use very often, but I've actually become to love. I'm not usually a pink girl, but these pages really cheer me up. I'm full of happiness, really. They're both images from Flow magazine, which is a UK magazine, but they've got an international magazine that comes out, and they're just full of beautiful illustrations. It's on matte paper. They work really, really well. So trying to get that drippy effect with the paint again actually worked this time. The circles in the background are made with a combination of golden gel glass bead paste, and I mixed in some crystal glitter as well. And then stamped over the top and added a few different things, put the collage piece over the top. This one was just a black and white illustration, so I've added some extra colour to it, which I quite liked. This piece was inspired by Lisa Oxley, Scrapwitch. She's doing some amazing stuff at the moment on Instagram and on YouTube, so check her channel out. And again, this is the black piece down the middle. She does in quite a few of her pieces and just uses stencils so effectively, and I'm so jealous of her stencil collection. And she is directly responsible for me increasing my stencil collection by double already in the last few months. So I really like the colours of this. Again, that pink was sitting on my desk, it sort of crept in again. Again, I stamped with the oxide inks. It was beautiful green, matched the page beautifully, and then the colours died down again. So I might have to get the paint pens out and go over the top of it, I think. This is a use it up page, just had lots of my leftover stencils on it, really loved it. Found this quote picture in one of the magazines I was chopping up and just attached it with a bit of washi and put a drop shadow around it. Really, really simple, but quite like it. I've got a video, one of my first YouTube videos is on how I made this page. Lots of layers on it. It was for the Dina Wakeley Media Tribe Challenge using squares. So stamped out some squares of with Dylusions ink and then put some collage over the top of it. This was using some gel print circles that I had left over on the Dina Wakeley collage paper, using some golds in the background on that black gesso, and it really pops. This page was a Honey Slim Pickings page, so I got Stu to come into my studio and choose 5 items, and those are the only 5 items I could use. I cheated somewhat by then adding the collage over the top because it just wasn't finished, and I quite like how it ended up. So there's another video on my YouTube channel about this, but it was using a black pen, pink paint pen, a purple alcohol marker, an incredible ink, Jane Davenport Incredible ink in Hydrangea, and something else. Can't remember what the other thing was. I think it was another ink, another bluish ink. Trying to get that drippy effect in the background, but because it was on the cotton rag paper, I gessoed the paper, which was a mistake for this because everything sank into it, so I didn't get the depth of colour that I wanted with it. So I ended up sort of doing this Z-tangle-y thing, drawing around the edges of it. Quite like how it ended up in the end, but it was a bit of a process getting that. This is a page inspired by Ink Quill, and she's got a video of how she created hers. And again, it was just, what do I do with those burlap pages? I'm going to chop it up, so, which I did on this page, cut it into the height, so I've got this sort of layout that flips. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. Quite like the contrast between the colour and the black, and then having the same on the background here again. It's quite a good way to sort of put in a bit of journaling about what's happening. This page was inspired by a video I watched on Dina Wakeley on how to do expressionist abstracts. I'm sure I've said that wrong. But basically talking about what sort of shapes you use and what colours you use and so on. I quite liked how it started out, then I added too much to it, then I hated it, then I added a print over the top in a circle, and I didn't like it, and then when I was doing some foiled prints, I ended up with this print, and I actually quite like how that turned out. However, it was my first time to use these Tim Holtz foam alphabet stamps, and I fell in love with those. So I'm quite happy with how the page looks now, but it took a bit of me going back to it and forward to it and back to it to make me really happy about it. Move this over here so it's back in the light again. These 2 pages, again, playing around with the Dina Wakeley tissue paper. This page was inspired by Inky Fairy Designs. She did a page using this Scribble Girl, which I loved. I wanted to have a go at it, and this is using the new marine colour, which is just a beautiful colour to use. And just doing all that layering over the top. I love the way that even though that's stamped on the collage paper, you can blend it in so it looks like it's been painted in now. Some of the gold has transferred from one page to the other, but I actually quite like how that looks on the page. Sort of just adds to it. This page was sort of using all my leftovers on the craft paper, using the new Dylusions shimmer sprays, and when I did this stamping or printing, it just looked really fiery to me, so I thought it worked perfectly with this page. This is me playing with the new Dina Wakeley paints, the eggplant, olive and marine. One of my challenges is I'm really bad at leaving white space, or in this case brown space, so I wanted to leave some of the craft showing, and I'm really glad I did. I think it sort of felt really balanced to me when I finished it off. Again, going back to circles, either hand-drawn or using the stamps, and adding a bit of gold in there just to pick up the highlights from that olive colour and the craft paper. Now these two were from my experimenting doing image transfers from the gel press plate, and I've got a video on how I created this print in particular, and I was super excited when I got such a perfect print for both of them. It is a really hit and miss process. I would encourage you, if you're interested in how it's done, to go and check out the videos, and there's quite a number of people who've done it, but this video in particular is up on my site. But it's a really fun process, but be prepared. It's going to be work, and you're going to be so excited, and then you're going to do it again and it might not work, so you just need to iron out the kinks. But it is a really fun technique, and you feel so proud of yourself when actually you get it right. This page is me sort of coming to the realization that I love colour in every shape, size, and I love layering. This is another video on my YouTube page, using the collage tissues in the background, using a lot of the different paints, layering up using the stencils and the inks, and I just love the sentiment of the quote and the fact that you've got all these faces behind coming through supporting these people. It sort of says a lot for me. This is a page experimenting just using my washi tape. I've got all these beautiful washi tapes sitting there, never get to use them, so I just thought, nah, slap them down the page, see what you can come up with, using magazine images and going over the top, sort of creating them, making them yours using paint pens. And then I got really riled because I actually read what was on the shirt, why there be no great women artists. So you know, what were they thinking really? This is a piece I was looking for inspiration of how to do hair, and I came across this piece by Jane Davenport, which I just love the colours. I've had this page sitting in my journal for ages now with texture paste and the spray inks on it, and the colours just match perfectly, so I just wanted to have this in there as a bit of a reference. I went over the top with some silver marker and some white paint pen, just again to get my hand into the trying to replicate the flowy lines, and the quote says, "Who says that my dreams have to stay just my dreams?" So I just thought it kind of all worked together. I just love the colours in it. Again, using the petition in the background. These two pages are up on my YouTube channel as well. This is a challenge in everything sort of going wrong for me. The watercolour background didn't work the way I wanted it to. Everything kind of went wrong with it, and then so that took me about an hour to complete, and this took about 15 minutes to do, just by slapping down stuff that I had and just having fun with it and not thinking about it. I think I overthunk this page too much. The piece of paper down the middle is actually my pieces of paper I use. I tuck in my journal when I'm working, and that's what they've ended up with. So that's actually this piece here, and I love them so much, but I couldn't take myself to actually use it, so I scanned it and printed it out and then stamped over the top and added some more stuff to it. So I'm collecting these beautiful papers that I'll do something with, hopefully, but just FYI, don't throw out anything. These pages are using collage again. This is my first page using scribble sticks as a stamp, and this page using blackout poetry or redacted poetry, where you get a piece of text and you go through and you black out everything you don't want, so you end up with your own piece of poetry. Again, it's another technique I use when I'm teaching. The kids love to do it. It gives them words that they may not use in their vocabulary usually, but they can put together to make their own poem. Using some cheesecloth in the background. Again, stamping with oxides. I don't know why I keep doing it, because I know what it's going to end up looking like. This page I'm really proud of, because this is all drawn by me, using the Epic pen. I love the way I could put the writing in her hair. I'm really happy with how the colours came across, even though it's got some excess stencil in the background and stuff. I don't mind that. I love that she reminds me of Ariel. I don't know why, but yeah, just I'm really pleased. Sort of, I've gone from Scary Girls, can't find her anymore, Scary Girls, to something like that. This is a really quick collage I did using the Creative Cosmic Shimmer texture paste. This is just the most amazing gold, and it dries really quickly, which is a huge bonus. This is a page that again is on my YouTube channel, called Girls with Flower in Her Hair. This is a different sample of something similar, using texture paste, lots of inks in the background to flood through, painting the girl's face. This is actually out of a magazine and then painted over, and doing the background as well. It's such a fun technique, and when you first flood the ink through the stencil, through the texture paste, it looks amazing. I had to put this page in here because Karen Yates put me on to using watercolour primer on the cotton rag, and it works really well. So I've got the Jane Davenport Brights set, and I wanted to have a go on the cotton rag, and I had to draw the little leafless swatch doll again. And this is an illustration I did for the girls for their bedroom wall, the different animals. So I wanted to replicate that into my journal because it's a pretty special painting that I've done for them, and the fact that I could then include her into it as well was, yeah, very pleased with. This is one of the last pages I did in the journal, again playing with that texture paste on the black, which really popped. Was trying a few different things with this page and it just wasn't working for me, and then I put that gold on and I just loved it. This was the Dilutions mask of the girl, and then some stamp words from Dina Wakely on her collage paper. In the background I've got the Stabilo oil pencil in white and black. I've only just got those in the last few days and they are amazing. I know why they're called the magic pencil, because they just work over everything. And I may have, when I bought pencils, bought some new stamps, so I had to use those too. Friends at the end, and I just really liked how they turned out. Again, using the pencil in the background. This page was done using the Jane Davenport Brights, and it was inspired by a video by Kate Palmer doing a cityscape and letting it drop down. I used the primer in the background and it worked really well, but then I stamped on it with the archival ink and it split out somewhat. Kind of works with the image, but yeah, I was quite surprised. It was really crisp and clear when I first did it, and then when I've gone back to it, it's gone like this. Now, I didn't have any masking fluid when I first did this, which I would have preferred to put the letters in with, so I just used stickers, stuck those down, and then removed them, so which is why some of the papers come up, but I quite like that effect, and I've just gone around with a Sharpie pen just to sort of highlight them off the page, so they kind of blend in and they kind of don't. This technique is one that again I do with the kids in my class a lot. Using a magazine image or black and white colouring pages are really good. Just cut out a section of it, make sure there's lots of lines on the edges, and then continue them out to the edge of your page. Usually I do it using a ruler, so you kind of get this organic image in the middle and then sharp lines, but I quite like, this is actually a stitched picture or a quilt, and I wanted to make the flowy lines on it, and then just using the watercolour paints over the background and some ink and stencils just to add in a bit of texture. So it's completely crazy looking, but it was a fun warm-up exercise. I was feeling very uninspired, so I wanted just to do something quick and easy that I didn't have to think about all that much. This is one of the last burlap pages I had, where I just chucked every single scrap I had sitting on my desk at it. So it's really, really thick. It's got tags and all sorts of things sitting over the top of it. Again, I had all my paints sitting out, so I slapped those down using the pencil, and you can see it's got that beautiful darkness to it, even though it's pencil over the top of it, and some new stamps in the background. As you can see, I did these 3 pages last night, so I had the same paint sitting out. I had the leftover scraps of that collage paint paper, so I stuck those down. Some stamped images that didn't work, stencils, using up paint, so it's all slapped down there. Looks like a complete mess, but I quite like it. So embrace imperfection, it definitely isn't perfect. This page, again using those new stamps, I really love. When they first came out, I didn't like them and they didn't have them ideas for them, and now I'm sort of using them everything. I love the size of them and I love the quirkiness of them. Using the Dina Wakley washi tape in the background, I've actually cut out the scallop because, you know, you have nothing better to do. And this is one of my favourite ways, if I'm adding journaling, because I don't particularly like my handwriting, is to draw wavy wonky lines and then write in uppercase letters along it. And I just like the varying of the widths and the sizes and so on. It kind of makes it more of a pattern rather than the writing, so you kind of get that dual effect happening. And I've got some of the glitter, Jane Davenport glitter pens in the background, giving it that sparkle. I've got this video on my YouTube channel. It was for a mermaid washi giveaway for Jane Davenport, so I had lots of fun drawing this, and again really happy with how the hair turned out using the paint over pens and the washi tape and drawing in the mermaid scales. And my final page was this one, which again was a James Burke creative swatch. Instead of doing swatch dolls, he did swatch houses called Swatch Neighbourhood. It's a really cute video to watch and super easy to do, and yeah, I just really liked it. And it's the little things in life that make things big, that make life big. So thank you very much for sticking around for this very chatty video. I hope there's something in there that inspired you or that you liked. I've had fun making this journal and I can't wait to keep going, and I can't wait to keep sharing with you. So hopefully you'll be here for the next journal flip. Okay, thank you, and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in seeing more in the future. See you later.